and welcome to That Nerd Thing, where we uncover the magical impact that fandoms have on our lives. My name is Morgan, and I am so excited to get started and to introduce this podcast to you. This has been an idea that has been brewing in the back of my mind for quite some time now, and I am so excited to get started. I wanted to create this short intro episode to let you know more about what this podcast is and what I hope it to be, and to give you an idea into who I am. So, let me first start with how I define nerd on this podcast. So, I believe that being a nerd really just involves having something that you're really passionate about and wanting to just dive deep into it and learn about it and be curious and just have passion and excitement. It's not about being the biggest fan or being the best fan or even the most critical thinker when it comes to theories or discussions. It truly is just about that excitement and that joy and that passion. And that is what we are going to celebrate on this show. That is what we are going to celebrate on That Nerd Thing. My ultimate hope for this podcast is that it becomes a platform to really elevate nerd voices. Every episode, I hope to have a guest who has a fandom that they are just so passionate about. These aren't going to be typical interviews where I just ask question after question. And these aren't going to only be guests that have a large social media presence or a large following. I want this podcast to really embrace and welcome everyday people as well. Besides being a major nerd, part of my identity is that I am also a psychologist. And even though this is definitely not a therapy podcast, I'm going to use my experience as a therapist when it comes to having deep, meaningful, and fun conversations. Each week, when I have a different guest on the show, or really I would like to say that they're almost going to be the co host of the week, they're going to share a fandom that they're passionate about, and we will both share our own journeys within that fandom. We'll talk about what the fandom itself is like and maybe even analyze the fandom itself. We'll also share how that specific fandom has really shaped our lives and where we think our lives might be today if we didn't have that fandom to really dive deep into. And each guest will also be sharing some fun and unique pieces about their own nerdy identity. Every show, we will be wrapping up with some fun recommendations on how to embrace our own nerdiness. I created this podcast as my own opportunity to really embrace my own passions, nerdiness, and creativity. And I want to give you the chance to join in on the excitement of these fandoms and really learn what it truly means to get involved in these communities. Fandoms are fun and joyful, and they could also serve us really well when life might not be so easy. A few months ago, I experienced a very significant loss in my life, and part of my own grieving process was to find joy in fandoms. Not just fandoms that I've been involved in for years, like Harry Potter and Doctor Who, but also embracing new fandoms and hobbies as well. I've recently gotten into the Empyrean series, and I've also joined several in person book clubs. I've really enjoyed meeting new people and having conversations and just learning from them about their own passions and us really sharing our passions together. And from there, the idea for this podcast just grew. And I'm sure many of you can truly relate to finding joy and fun and even just having the ability to process your own emotions in these fandoms, in these stories, just diving deep and really seeing yourself in characters and working through things that you might be experiencing. I am so excited to get started, and we have some really fun guests coming up, and you are definitely going to hear me fangirl quite a bit. I do not plan on holding back when it comes to the fangirling. I'm so grateful that you are here listening, and it would mean so much to me if you are able to rate and review this podcast on whatever podcast platform you're listening to the show on. Ratings and reviews really do help so much with getting a podcast started, and I deeply appreciate it. And please feel free to email me thoughts about any of your favorite nerdy fandoms or any thoughts about the show at thatnerdthingpod@gmail.com. I plan on responding to every email that I receive. And be sure to follow That Nerd Thing on social media with the handle thatnerdthingpod. Now, as I wrap up for today with this intro episode, I, you know, I want to speak directly to you, the listener. Because, I'm sure that there's a potential artist listening, a potential writer, scientist, performer, musician, like really the list goes on and on. And I truly hope that when you listen, you're able to relate and see yourselves in our conversations and even see what's possible and what is out there for you to explore in the fandom world. Because that's really what the show is about, just elevating all of our voices and finding community. Because when I was growing up, being a nerd wasn't so cool, but now I think being a nerd is probably the coolest thing you could be. So I would love for you to hop into this makeshift DeLorean, this bigger on the inside TARDIS, or even use some Floo powder to go on this nerdy adventure and journey with me to embrace the voices of fandoms. And I will see you next time.